Hi everyone, and welcome to another video. I'm making this video to talk about actually supplements. I think we haven't actually talked about those pretty much in any of our previous videos we've had, so I think it's actually quite important to touch upon. And I actually wanted to make a completely different way to go about it, and actually to paint it more in a way that is actually the most helpful for most likely each one of you, based also on my own experience I've basically had over the past, I would say, couple of years, but like more hands-on about like two, to be quite fair. But I think still it's quite a bit important to give this take that actually can help you the most. So what we actually mostly talk about is how actually supplements are looked at today's era mostly, what's actually good about it, and what kind of mentality or stance we would most likely look at it with, because I think it's also quite a bit of a danger in a way that if you overuse supplements, the danger is that you don't have to do that. So what we'll mostly talk about is that you don't have to have 30 supplements in your tool stack. What you can do is to basically have just a couple, but we can also touch upon them like in the later part of the video as well. So just to touch upon, I think the most important thing, I also had the statistic on that, is that when I actually read this, is that the supplements market is projected to increase by almost 50%. Now this is taken from 2021 to 2028, so in just that short time frame, it's projected to increase by 50% in terms of the market cap itself, and it's actually quite amazing because I would say it's actually quite huge already. So we can actually already determine that there will be a lot more use of supplements of any kind, like both for cognitive or physical or performance capabilities themselves. Now, what I think is the really huge thing is that I would really say that it's also increasing is that people seem to, or even like myself in the past, we really prioritize having like a tool stack of sorts. So what does a tool stack mean? It means to have a huge, let's say, bag of different supplements that you use for different enhancements. The issue I have with that is that it basically takes away the time from other things. Like first, because of course, like most of us, I don't even know one person who doesn't research the supplements they're about to take, even though more likely that actually research isn't a huge amount, but it's mostly like based on other people's opinions as well about the actual supplement itself. And again, I have to say here that every person's experience will have to be different based on how basically all of our brains are just built in a different way. We have similarities, but I would say in terms of the hormonal and chemical makeup, like we have so many variabilities that these supplements that basically impact those, we all have varying degree of success. Like for example, if we already have a lot of testosterone and we try a supplement that increases testosterone, then there might be an increase, but percentage-wise might not be that big, so you might not even notice the effects, right? And I think that's what actually can happen, and does happen quite a lot, is that we basically take something we don't really need, because I don't think that a lot of times we actually look into whether we actually do need that, like how it actually does seem to work. And I will say this is that we basically see that supplement, like for example, we just see creatine monohydrate, that it enhances physical performance and also recovery. But so of course, like we will say that like it's the most studied supplement. It's also one of our products as well, and we go take that, but we don't check whether we actually have enough creatine. Now, of course, in this particular scenario, we don't. It's actually quite hard to get it, so this is why it's also been the most studied. But this is actually done like along most of the supplements themselves, and I would even say that it's actually as funny as that usually the supplements like offer maybe like 5% or less of improvement, like overall, I would say. And that's also why we don't even notice the effects that much like day to day, because either they have, let's say, more long-term effects, or they just basically don't provide as much benefits. Like if you are lifting 20 kg, like 5% improvement, you're not going to notice that in any day, right? Like if we don't sleep correctly, if we don't time our sunlight exposure as we should, like we talked about in the previous videos already, then those can have even effects like even like same times of that. So that's why it's pretty hard to notice this 5% effect of supplements. Of course, it can be more or less, it depends. But I would actually say that like we ourselves can't really attribute it to the supplement itself. What I think is actually the best scenario, and I will go about my own experience, what I've had before. But what I think is actually the best thing to do is to actually look at the studies on the particular supplements we would like to take and look into the benefits, and also look at the second thing is how likely I might be missing this particular chemical itself. Again, we can talk about um, vitamin D, for example, and that one, if you don't have all of sun exposure or don't eat all of the particular foods and you have to eat a lot of them to actually get the vitamin D, then it's very much likely that you are missing out on that. So it makes sense in that case, like based on probabilities, to actually take it, right? Even as a preventive measure. But what I've seen and what I've actually done myself quite a lot in the past, I mean, we can talk about it now, 2 years ago, is that basically starting the fitness, there is a lot of emphasis on actually supplements. Like I don't think there is a single person who doesn't take some kind of supplement. There will be always outliers, but on average, I will always say that at least 90% and plus of people actually do, who actually try to go to the gym, out of males especially. And there is quite a bit of emphasis to have this called so-called tool stacks, to have basically a variety of supplements that most likely can improve either performance, recovery, or cognitive benefits as well. But I would say there's actually two issues behind that. Is that one, which I have also outlined, is that there are possible side effects to that, and I don't think it's actually that much bad short term, but rather long term. And the second thing is that it would be rather both to the finance and of the supplements when we would actually combine that with the benefits we actually get, and along with that the mental drag, which I've basically called that a mental drag of having it even perhaps as your hobby, and which basically takes away most likely the time from other things. Now, I said that supplements are amazing, and one thing is what's actually great is that the whole industry offers a lot of variety of what you can actually take. So if you really are going after a particular thing, like for example, if you really want recovery after workouts, you have many things you can take. Like citrulline malate also helps quite a bit with that. There's creatine also, which has a huge emphasis on that. So you not only have one compound, but you have many, even tens or hundreds of compounds now, which you can take for particular things, which is amazing. But the thing where we fail to actually stop to look at it is you don't have to take each one of them for each thing. Like it's much better for you if you look at the diversity and look at, okay, so there are possible side effects we can actually have out of this. I will say that most likely based on studies we don't know all of them, and I will tell you one example is that multivitamins are, I would say, like one of the most common ones which are used, and majority if not all of them contain iron. And if you want to prevent aging, then basically you're doing the exact opposite, because basically iron does have huge, if not the major effects on the aging of all of our cells in our bodies. So without actually knowing what the different compounds do in the in the supplement itself, you can actually be doing exactly the opposite of what you want, which I will 100% say that there is a lot of people, like even myself in the past, I did take multivitamins themselves, and instead then after that opted for more natural means. I basically took more vegetables themselves and tried to do fruits. Of course, it was short lasting, but still tried to get it more out of the basically almost or normal daily meals. I will now go into basically my own experience because I've already started to go into that. So I will most likely focus on the last 2 years. And what I will mention is that when I was actually starting pretty much the gym itself, I basically had like most also tool stack of I think 6 compounds, which were mostly like there was this citrulline malate, I think taurine, at the time also creatine and other stuff. And but I've actually noticed that like the costs aren't actually that much of an issue. Like it's still not a huge tool stack as I would say on average people have, but it's more like of a mental drink that you have to take it each day. One thing, there's a lot of compounds which you have to mix and basically just takes your mental into it. Second thing is that you aren't always sure whether it actually does work 100%. The third thing is also that basically you're always thinking whether to add something in there or not. And there's like probably like 10 more things I could talk about, but the most interesting thing in my own experience is that I didn't see any immediate benefits out of those at the time, and like most likely there were, at least in the mid to long term, at the very least. But when I actually did the controls test, which means to not use the supplements themselves, I didn't notice any effects. Basically, it looked the same, and over time I even improved without them. Like I think it took about 2 weeks. I already like ditched them at the time, but I was still thinking that okay, if there will be some huge effects, I can actually come back to that. But that really didn't happen at all. And what I've instead noticed that basically by my estimations would be this 5% less of improvements that I've actually seen. So instead of having 6 compounds, I basically decided to have the ones that I would like to focus on the most. And at that time, I did reduce that to basically keeping the tryptophan as well, which was there. I basically really emphasized to have high serotonin because at the time I also had this idea that basically all the male kind of leaders in the chimpanzees were actually had quite high serotonin. So basically try to have that and then still tried to keep the multivitamin at the time. Then I also ditched that, mostly due to the costs themselves. I just didn't want to care about it anymore. And then like later on, I also found out the thing about iron, and I want to prevent actually aging too much. So that was actually one of the reasons after that. And then over time, I added this vitamin D into the tool stack as well, due to the more lack of sunlight as we basically work inside. It's actually quite a bit important. And creatine monohydrate, which I've basically taken and still take as the only supplement that's probably the longest um, in my own supplement reservoir, and basically decided to at least keep one of those and just focus on that. And that's also why the reason why I've basically created as a product is that it has huge benefits. Like I do believe it's talked about as the most studied supplement itself. We are not talking about creatine monohydrate because there are some other forms of it. But in terms of just the benefits on both the physical performance itself, the recovery, and even cognitive benefits, which at the time I had no idea of, but I kind of assumed because it seemed to also help with the mental a bit. Like and from basically the first time I took it, basically did seem to even behave differently thanks to it. But the effects aren't huge, but you do feel it. But I never attributed to that, so that was actually quite interesting at the time, and that's basically the tools that I had. So after a while, I even stopped researching new supplements. I always hear there's something new. I always hear there's like the second thing, the second creatine monohydrate, which is like completely different compound, but it apparently has a lot of similar benefits. But basically, the best thing what we could actually do is to teach and really emphasize that smaller amount of variety in our supplements is actually much better because it allows you to focus more on what actually gives you the most percentage-wise. I think we really overblow the effects that the supplements have, most likely because they're actually easy to take. Like instead of pushing more in the gym itself or pushing more to learn, taking supplements is actually quite easy. Just put in your mouth and go right. So this is why I would really say that in terms of the supplements, I think that the mentality that is kind of the best case is that, at least from what I've seen, is to keep it one simple. For example, I ditched this multivitamin as mentioned, so at the moment I have basically two things that I do take, which is this vitamin D due to sunlight and creatine monohydrate as a lasting one. But out of those, I would say if we really do focus on gym itself and nutrition, which is like major part of it. Basically, fitness it will actually get you much further than doing supplements. Like even you have basically more time and ability to actually focus on what I think matters more. You can even get in the end, like you can actually save costs, earn even more cash to perhaps even get fitness coaches to improve your lifts, which will be much better percentage-wise improvements than just taking supplements. At least that would actually make the most sense, I would say at the moment at least. So this is the main message. Hopefully this did help you guys. I think that supplements will become even bigger thing into the next years. I do assume that, like they will be even more taken. But I really do emphasize that I think the biggest improvement that they can actually put you ahead uh, a gig comparing to people who actually do take a lot of them is that if you do really emphasize more focus on the gym itself, the basically fitness components and nutrition, this will actually help you much more than basically making supplements into your life hobby, and also the quality of life I think quite a bit improves. So hopefully this did help you. We'll have even more videos like coming into the future. Basically, it took a couple of days to quite a bit focus on work outside of this as well, which really helps. Like I'm quite a bit buzzing to go forward now. So really thank you, and at the very least, enjoy your day. Bye.